Okay, hi Virgo. I just got really excited because I figured out a new feature that will make my life so much easier. So thank you, Virgo, for inspiring my analytical thought. So I have a lot of strong Virgo in my chart. I don't have any of the luminaries or my rising sign, but I have strong Virgo in my chart. So I love the Virgo quality. So welcome everyone, and welcome to Catalyst Energies. Welcome to your astrology forecast for the full moon. That is Wednesday, February 16th, 2022. Our full moon in Leo, with a grand square with the moon's nodes, all starseed, galactic degrees in this beautiful grand square that you can see here. We're all going to go through this together. So this report is for Leo. I already did them. Virgo rising, Virgo moon, Virgo sun, and we're going to look at the themes that are leading from the full moon, which is a culmination point of full reflection through our expression and actions of normally what is hidden inside of us or is not nearly as obvious emotionally and intuitively. But also too, we're going to look at the what do we do from there, right? Because the full moon gets a lot of attention because this is like full lunar activity, right? Full intensity of feeling, right? But it's really these quarter moons, and it'll be the third quarter moon that we move into on the 23rd and 24th, that I'm seeing a lot more of the real personalized challenge. And these quarter moons are definitely a thorn in the side, and they do represent like really close to home challenge. I mean, this grand square for this full moon is going to be everybody on this planet, right? Is going to be going through the very same or similar challenges and confrontations. It's going to be very shocking and exciting, and in terms of how we're all going to feel and where it's karmic, very karmic at a soul level, which is providing so much of the tension. But it's going to be from there that we want to apply what we've learned at the full moon. Do we have the capacity to store the amount of energy that is generated individually that we want to release, right? Do the areas of life that are Aquarius for all of us, and for Virgo, it's in sixth house. This is the Virgo house usually. This is traditionally the Virgo house. This is the house of actually, taking your resources and putting them where they belong in order to be in a synthetic or a synthesis and in a flow internally, right? The sixth house is training and practice and routines and habits, good and bad, right? Self-sabotaging or really positive oriented thoughts. This is your meditation practice, your martial arts practice, right? Your exercise routine, your dietary habits, hidden enemies, healing crises. All of these are sixth house because these are all things that get our shit together or that put us in a position to physically put things where they belong. And so hygiene, from energetic to physical, is a very big part of the sixth house too, being organized, being meticulous. So Virgo, you know all about this, right? And so Mercury, your ruler, is now in the sixth house. It's going to meet Saturn at the next new moon, which is on March 1st. And that's, Virgo, there's loose ends to tie up karmically and that are also involved in the realm of the mind and your understanding. And for as much as Virgo being an earth sign, you're ruled by Mercury. So it's about analysis and synthesis, and not necessarily synthesis in an alchemical way where you're creating the third of the Trinity, right? You're participating in the alchemical process actively. It's much more about the alchemy within and the function of our root system actually nourishing us as a being. And so this is expressed through the very material routines and habits that we utilize in our everyday life and also our service. So Virgo, I mean, you have Saturn here, which is, I think, has been really very good for you in terms of stabilizing and giving you like the secure power and authority in your own life to stick to a schedule, stick to a routine, take care of yourself. It also does mean that there's no wiggle room anymore for any of this. And so many Virgo might have found that things about their daily eating habits, their diet, their exercise, all of these self-care mechanisms might have it might seem like you've gotten more sensitive, but perhaps it's just because Saturn has been unyielding in its timeline of what it takes to get things accomplished within yourself. Having the discipline of Saturn, isn't that a horrible thing? And now with the sun at the full moon, that is going to show the Virgo person, is your daily life, your habits, your routines, your practices, will it store the amount of energy that it will be likely released as a result of reflection back to ourselves with the full moon in the realm of, the transcendental, right? The collective unconscious, not just you. Now you're surrendering to everything in the 12th house. And this is often expressed in a lot of different ways, but it's isolation through going to be any kind of like prison or hospital or an ashram, right? Where you're going by choice and separating yourself, isolating yourself to return to source. This is experienced too with like just giving yourself over to your spiritual path and experience oneness by going within and being isolated, returning to source, returning to God. Also, imagination and dreams and artistic renderings are all in the 12th house. This is the astral realm and the Akashic realm. So all is everything else here. It's just all the plasma of the woo, right? That vibrates, and it is very experiential. When we talk about Pisces and the 12th house, this is the end and the return back to the beginning. So, and the ultimate ending of a cycle. And there's something here that it's not going to just be how you feel, but you're going to be picking up, Virgo, a lot of the collective's overwhelm of potential at a karmic level. These are many cycles that I feel like, especially with Leo in the 12th house, there's a big Atlantis story that is going to be felt really strongly through the Virgo person in probably your dreams, maybe in that transcendental space. Maybe you're just emotionally picking it up, and it's very strong in its resonance. So just be aware and know that it's really tugging on these corners of what you believe and what you've known in the past, right? Because that's the third house, and the South Node is what you've mastered. And it's moving towards belief systems and big picture ideas here with the North Node and Uranus that are about natural fulfillment, and they are about natural cycles. And this is the ninth house is about your belief systems, religion, philosophies, and the big picture of understanding and the actual alchemical transmutation. And for the Virgo person, it's the meaning that derives or leads to accomplishment is very much the meaning of just being in communion with what is, right? Because that's very Taurus. The medium of our growth has so much meaning. And of course, this is the area that the Virgo person is being pulled at a soul level. We all are right now in terms of end belief systems, and they are not very stabilized with Uranus here as well. It's shifting a lot. And so Uranus is part of the conversation as we lead into the next new moon, because it's still in its post-retrograde shadow, right? It's still in territory that it's already been in. And so it's more, the pistons are firing. It's more active, and there's more innovation. There's more nodes being connected in a lot of ways in terms of belief systems and big picture. But that also comes back to, in some ways, what is the everyday routine and habits and your works? What is it able to store? Because the amount of energy, because it's going to be when Mercury meets Saturn on the new moon, right, March 1st, and we'll show that on the chart. We're going to need that energy. We're going to really need it. So take advantage of this time. I think for Virgo, it's going to be very powerful because it's not going to be just your stuff. It's going to be a connection into many stories and the overwhelming but very exciting possibilities of like really fulfilling this story and moving on. So when we look actually to it's the full moon is going to be a reflection back. It's not necessarily a time to like do anything other than allow yourself to release what is quite obviously not working for you or is too much for your everyday life to handle, right? This can be very destabilizing to the mind in particular and into your understanding on what things mean. So if we go ahead a week, this is where things I think are going to shake up more, right? Because it's these quarter moons that tend to be the thorn in our side, right? The new moon and the full moon are very distinct points in the progression of the beginning and the middle, right? Of the lunar transit. At the darkest to its most illuminated. But it's these quarters where we are challenged along the way as we feel into all of the experiences. And for the Virgo person, what we're going to find here is the sun now has moved into your 7th house, okay? And Jupiter and Neptune is part of this conversation. Again, Venus and Mars are conjunct in your 5th house, your own passion and your joy and your playfulness, right? And your romance and taking social risks, right? And really accomplishing something that brings joy to your heart. There's a big release here for you, Virgo, that is wiping away the dust and the debris of an outdated dead weight system. And then you get to move forward with this very fertile and very there's a lot of potency here between Mars and Venus as they are moving in their maturity and their ambition in this area for you. So there might be a lot of inspiration. There might be a lot of activation of your passion and your joy. And this can express itself in a lot of different types of activities, right? The things that are fun, the things that make you, that trigger that passion, right? This is creative expression. This is, drama and performance. This is showing your colors, being confident and shining and being authentic. And so there's a connection here between both of them that's going to show up along the course of this waning moon phase with Neptune, which has made things very passive or like taken away all personal boundaries in an area where you're already finding yourself giving of yourself to your relationships and the structure of relationships. So you've either like just not had any ambition to really find that personal boundary and it's been very passive, or you have found that your interpersonal relationships are no different than the collective humanitarian very Christ-like way of being with people. So Jupiter here has certainly given some more meaning, I think, and some more resources, and to give you a sense of, like I said, meaning in the structure of these relationships. And then when the sun is here, this is where I feel like, you're going to really start finding yourself in relationships again, Virgo. And these can be all kinds of relationships. You're talking about your marriage and your spouse, your domestic, really any committed relationship, friendships, business partners, your clients, right? Anybody that you're in a business relationship with, or your employees, perhaps. Or people who contract with you, but it's any kind of binding agreement that you're invested in as a person is expressed in the 7th house, and it's the structure, the fairness, the balance of that relationship that we learn about in the 7th house. We apply our knowledge of ourselves. So the challenge here is that the moon will come into the fourth house, right? And this is, you're going to get very sensitive to your feels and your inner life and your personal life and your tighter family relationships and more of an intimate set of bonds that hold you emotionally. That's the fourth house, and it's usually expressed as home and family, but it's any relationship or the group that helped you define your character or continues to. And so while the meaning of it and wanting to really play the role as, play the game in a positive way, right? Where you practice group solidarity by playing these group games and really feeling into the meaning of that for you personally, right? And where your character develops. It's going to be in the context of the actual relationship itself, where you're going to really find your expression by just kind of showcasing yourself. It's the difference between playing a baseball game or playing the game or participating in the battle as opposed to coming back from the battle and being in the military parade and everybody's cheering for you, right? Those are different things. This is experiential and this is way more active. And so the tendency for all of us is going to, I think, want to kind of drop into the temptation of wanting to act on how we feel and our strength together. And this is going to be in the area of where you are really stabilized and where you find your emotional support. And the real challenge and conflict is going to be in a draw to find your spiritual sustainment and your expression in the giving yourself entirely to your interpersonal relationship. And the Virgo person is one of the few that are able to do this without truly losing themselves, because the very nature of who they are is about the synthesis and the interaction of duality without losing the duality. Yeah. So this is also when Mercury comes out of its post-retrograde shadow. At the same time, Mars is in that sextile. So not only is there a release that is and the potential to really, in some ways, cultivate and fertilize a new institution, especially in this area for you, Virgo, your area of your joy and your passion and your play. Not only that, but there's going to be a balancing of accounts here. There's going to be something that's finally balanced out and a recompense, both with Mars and Venus, and they're both going to sextile Neptune, right? There's going to be a release and a balance out in this area that's really going to, I think, reinforce your ability to give yourself in your relationships fully. Something very important in this area. And it may have to do with dating or romance, or it may have to do with just the way you express yourself, your full nature. Maybe there's something about that is finally ready to go. And I would argue because Pluto has been here for a long time, that's already been destroyed on some level. And now it's initiating new growth, planting new seeds, activating them in a very, very personalized way. Venus and Mars are personal planets. They allow us to access those archetypes much more directly in our awareness and our consciousness. So I think that Virgo is going to see that there is something to invest here into this more spiritualized and fully immersed experience in one's relationships. Now, we do see Mercury and Chiron is still part of the picture as well. And like I said, Mercury's coming out of post-retrograde shadow at this point. So I do suspect that, yes, while there is this spiritual release for everybody, and for Virgo, it's between your own heart and then your role and the structure of your relationships. We're going to be moving into new territory. So again, this is about finding inspiration and being able to utilize your ruling planet, right? Mercury is the ruler of Virgo, to start problem solving and putting your mental energy and analysis towards your everyday life, your service, what you're doing with yourself. That's going to be really essential for maybe like a healing moment here with Chiron. So 1 second. Okay. So let's see what this degree is. I want to remind myself here. Oh, on the 20th, by the way, we're going to have the moon in a trine to Saturn. And it's a little bit, where was that? In Libra, right? So we'll see. I'll talk about that in the dailies. Yes, 11 degrees. Okay, so Virgo, you're also very good at when you are really just releasing the potential of who you are, is Aries, right? Acting on your own self-interest and your own output of energy. I mean, it really is so useful and fruitful in the area of power, right? And power generation. Because you have Chiron here, so this has also been where a lot of triggers are showing up in this realm of power, of intimacy, of sexual power, sexual intimacy, trust. This is where you invest. This is where you bet money. And this is where you have to see yourself in the mirror, right? This is the shadow realm, the 8th house, and getting into the occult and depth psychology and the shamanic realm, and getting into the death of the ego, right? The 8th house is death, sex, and taxes, right? The resources that are shared. So you either owe them or they're owed to you. And Virgo, there's just been, Chiron is just, poking at the wounds in this area. And so I can see how that would just take all of the energy out of even investing in the structure of relationships when there is a trigger in terms of the power dynamics that are brought forward. Now, Chiron is, there's nothing wrong with the ego trying to centralize our consciousness, right? We come into some sort of instead of things being, just kind of swirling around, right? There's like a center of gravity, and in this area that I think that we can really find as Mercury is, we're putting that mercurial energy. Well, Virgo is putting that mercurial energy towards this, being very pragmatic about what's going on in the daily life and what's going on in terms of how your resources and assets are utilized, in terms and all of them, right? Mental assets, emotional assets, energetic assets, how are you utilizing them, and how are you disciplining yourself and making the most out of what you have? Putting your mental energy to that, I think, is going to, again, allow you to find some sort of centralized perspective of self without getting pulled into like shame and guilt about something, right? Maybe, or just like, I don't want to go through the process of getting wounded again, and so I'll just be the healer of these types of scenarios, but not actually be in them because the risk involved is too much. Well, there's things going on in terms of your practice and what you're doing on your take care of yourself, and going to therapy, having counseling, doing the self-care stuff to have a handle on your mental and emotional health is going to have an impact on this space as well. So I see a real important healing opportunity, even as there is tension within the Virgo personality when it comes to how you feel about, how you feel towards your family, towards your loved ones, the people that you hold close and hold you close, and the meaning of that, and working together with them, right? That's gonna be the challenge. The crisis of consciousness is the 3rd quarter moon, but there's a lot of stuff on the, in tandem to that is allowing for a balancing out and a release, and seeing that there is something to actually work towards, and it doesn't have to all be sunk into like an inner life. And as much as that's really important, you still have to grow out as a plant. You can't just be all roots. And I think this is where Virgo might possibly get themselves kind of emotionally head in the sand in some ways, or just being really much more focused on the strength. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but this is in a square, right? There's something that's going to pull us out of that we have to pay attention to, because ultimately the seventh house is what's going to be relevant in the week following when we have the March new moon, right? And so let's go back a day. Virgo. Okay. Here we go. All right, friends. So it's March 2nd. My bad. So 12:45 a.m. we're going to have this Pisces new moon. This is a Syrian starseed marking. Virgo, there's a potential for, if you have 13, 14, 15 degrees of Virgo, you will have a Syrian starseed marking. So again, the avatar of the Christ consciousness, right? Compassion, unconditional love, forgiveness, right? And to be an example. This is really what this is, to be an avatar, right? To represent some sort of, as a symbol for those who want to follow in our footsteps, right? This is, and it's also connected to Jupiter, right? So we got a lot of advocacy and support and representation from Jupiter. That is also, it's got this leadership and then the big picture, right? Jupiter is presenting all the optimistic big picture elements of being an example to those, and for Virgo, in your relationships, in your interpersonal relationships. And then Sirius as a Syrian starseed activation. This is, again, they are very familiar with being an avatar type of figure, because these are the starseeds that tend to be the shamans and the energy workers. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they hold this frequency or this resonance of the Christ avatar, the Piscean avatar, right? Of not necessarily the martyr, but unconditional love and forgiveness and real human connection and compassion. So Virgo, you that's the thing, you represent in who you are that avatar walking the earth. And so it's the part of you that gets drawn out, the spiritual part of you, the godlike part of you, right? The divine blueprint part of you is coming out in your relationships, and it allows you to be, a placeholder, an example, a symbol in your relationships. And with Jupiter involved, it's going to be like symbolic and almost like the leader, right? That you find your meaning in your relationship. So that's going to be happening at the new moon. It's in a sextile to Uranus, Virgo, which is up here in your ninth house of belief systems, of foreign travel, mystical travel, higher education and advanced training, right? This is understanding and synthesis and your dissertation about life and the meaning of it and the collective value, which hasn't been very stable for Virgo, because Uranus is innovating and giving lots of different options, right? Glitching constantly of like, oh, I could have this, oh, I could have this, and not ever making a decision really, and keeping everybody on their toes about their assets and their value, like their actual value. And the value is really expressed for the Virgo person in beliefs, right? And in the power of our collective beliefs. So the new moon is also in a sextile to Uranus in the ninth house, Virgo. So you may also find that becoming this symbol of courage in your relationships, being a symbol that can be seen and inspire others and a sense of leadership, like real leadership, right? Somebody who's going to go into battle with their people on the front lines with them. And Jupiter and Pisces, I mean, this is very much a community spiritual leader in a way. So even though it almost is going to provide a much stronger and compelling potential of belief system and value system and spiritual value system by being this, right? It's there's all these options with Uranus in Taurus right now. It's these window shopping realities, and they keep glitching, and we keep seeing all these possibilities. And it's going to be this experience with the new moon, and over the course of next March, or in the course of March through that lunar cycle, that this is going to be an investment into really finding some innovative and humanitarian and futuristic belief systems. And oftentimes Uranus in the ninth house is going to trigger psychological crisis and massive belief system overhaul. And I think, for Virgo, that's happening in terms of the change in the material world and the shifting of the material world. But investing in whatever there's something for the Virgo person. They're going to realize what it's all been for, right? They're going to realize what it's all been for about themselves and release all this like dead weight over their heart. And then it's soon going to come into a much more powerful position in your relationships, and really step into a much more representative and a much more optimistic leadership position. And I think that that's going to really help stabilize what otherwise is an unstable shifting of belief system. I think that, and it's not going to, I'm not suggesting that it's going to get any more stable, but at the same time, you can make the most out of like the quantum leap in this area based on this new moon intention. So, but before we get here, as I said, it's going to be about the 23rd or the 24th of February that things are going to get really agitated and going to provide some more challenge to us. But we also do see that there's investment, there is healing opportunities here as well, even though there's going to be a temptation to really sink in emotionally, Virgo, to what is familiar and what has protected and comforted you emotionally this whole time, and the meaning of it, right? This is about taking a little bit of a risk here. And trusting that when you give yourself over to this situation as an agent of commitment, right? Like a soldier, for instance, right? That's like the Sabian symbol is like a parade of army officers, right? And everybody's cheering them, and they're in the parade in their nice uniform. Like if you've ever been part of like a military parade or Memorial Day parade, it's the same thing. But it's the experience of it rather than the action of it. And Virgo is there's going to be a tendency, I feel like, that Virgo's going to want to sink into the action of it in a much more intimate inner space, and be drawn towards the structure of the relationship as a whole, and not be able to kind of hide down here in the comfort of the security blanket, right? And that's because it's time for Virgo to step out into the public eye. You can only be a hermit for so long, and soon you're gonna have to bring that incredible mastery of yourself to the public, so that we can, all enjoy and learn from you, and you can set an example for everybody in your life. So I'm really excited for you, Virgo. I'm not sure everybody's experience is going to be the same, but you got a lot more time so far, so that's good, I suppose. And I am going to leave it there, though. So that's the basic idea, looking at the full moon up to the March new moon. So Virgo, if you're interested in reading or energetic support, you can go to my website that's linked in the description box below. You can check out all the services that are offered, and you can access all of the platforms that I do all of my content on. This is going to be the last time that these forecasts are going to be freely available on all those platforms. I'm moving posting all the forecasts by sign over to Subscribestar. So if you're interested in this content and you want access to these bi-monthly horoscope forecasts for your sign, you can link to Subscribestar in the description box below, and that could also really support this channel and support the work that I'm doing. So $3 a month, you have access to two astrology reports for your sign every month, and then also a weekly Starseed meetup that's going to probably be like a Zoom, but I'm not sure. I'm still working with format. So if that interests you, you can check that out too. Subscribestar is in the link below. So thank you so much, guys. Virgo, have a wonderful, truly, the full moon might be a little intense, but the lead up to the next new moon, I think, is going to be quite beautiful, and you may find some real heart-opening Virgo, which is really remarkable, and I'm excited for you. So take care of yourselves. Thank you for everything, and I'll see you on the next video, Virgo.